What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream here on Met Central as we have huge breaking news randomly here at 12 o'clock this afternoon on January 16th as the New York Mets have signed Bichette stunningly to a 3-year deal for 126 million, north of 40 million AAV. And according to the reports, it looks like he's going to be the third baseman for the Mets on today. And it also looks like there are opt-outs after 1 and 2 of this deal. I'm absolutely floored that this happened. I completely out of nowhere. And, they had to make some sort of pivot after Kyle Tucker. And I said it yesterday nonstop. There's going to be a backup plan. There's going to be a pivot because how could there not? If you're offering Kyle Tucker north of 50 million AAV, how could there not be some sort of pivot? And it looks like they have their pivot. And before we jump into everything, I ask that you leave a like on your way into the live show. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications. I'm just completely caught me off guard. My expectation, honestly, and, I kept hammering it home. And, this kind of ties into my brief thoughts is I thought Gino was the no doubt, no brainer pivot for the Mets. And to be honest with you, I really would have preferred Gino because at least he's someone that has played third base and has years where he's played good defensively at third base in comparison to Bichette, who has never played the position before. It's a weird fit. It's a weird move. I really don't know how to feel. Like, there's part of me that likes it. There's part of me that doesn't love it because I just don't know how to feel about the fit. It probably means Brett Beatty's gone. It probably means he's in a move for pitching. Maybe there's a world they still get Gino to be the DH and Polanco plays first and Bichette's playing third. But my whole question is, we heard nonstop about run prevention going into the offseason. And then you add a guy that has never played third base and, you get Jorge Polanco who's never played first base. And you're asking these guys to, play out of position. And, again, I have a lot of questions. There's no doubt that the bat is what it is, and it's a solid bat. But I don't know. I just feel weird and I'm stunned because this caught me completely off guard. But Matt, I'll let you jump in, obviously, with your initial thoughts and everything.
I mean, yeah, I was just sitting in my bed, minding my own business on my phone, and then all of a sudden I see the notification, the group chat come up, and Bichette signing with the Mets, and I'm like, what? Because like we were talking about last night on the stream, it's like there had to be some sort of pivot plan, and I did not expect it to be Bichette at all. Like, if you told me it was going to be Bichette, I was going to be like, no shot, because, and this even goes hand in hand with what I'm about to say right now, because listen, I like Bichette as a player. I like his bat. The defense is obviously very questionable, and we'll obviously get into more of that because the plan for right now is for him to play third base, which I have my questions and I have my doubts about. But like I said before, I like Bichette. Like I said, he has a very good bat. He can hit for power. He can hit for contact. And, hopefully if his leg does heal up, he at least offers you some speed on the base paths, because I know he had a lot of leg injuries last year, and that severely hampered his speed, especially, coming down the second half of the year and then into the playoffs. But like I said, if you told me at the start of the offseason that the Mets could sign Bichette, for me personally, I would have not been interested, because I thought, and this even went hand in hand with what the rumors that he might go to Philly, I thought it was clear that Bichette was getting a long-term deal. Something around the 7, 6, 30, $25 million range. Yes, I know, 6, 7. And I just didn't think that David Stearns would have any sort of appetite to go near that deal. Looking at it now, 3 years, 126, 42 million AAV, which is high. But again, I think Bichette is a very good player in terms of the bat. But I also do like the fact that there is opt-outs, at least after year 1, year 2. Whether he does opt out, I am not too sure, because I don't know if he'll have... And listen, I hope I'm proven wrong, because if he does have that type of season, he's going to be putting up really good numbers, and he's going to be elevating this Mets offense to the next level. I just don't know if he will have that type of season to where you will see him opt out of a 42 million AAV, because, I mean, that is a lot of money per year. But I mean, obviously, listen, I do have my concerns about him playing third base. What this means for Brett Beatty now, I would assume he's going to get traded. Obviously, Ken Rosenthal also pointed out that he might get moved to first base. I'm not really too much of a fan about that because I'd rather get more for proven bad at first base to pair with a Jorge Polanco than a Brett Beatty. If what we're doing with Brett Beatty right now, I would rather trade it for pitching, or if you want to trade it for outfield help, because we know the Boston Red Sox just lost Alex Bregman to the Chicago Cubs. They might be or they should be looking for a third base replacement. Possibly, could you maybe trade him for a Jarren Duran, and then that helps you with the outfield and the outfield defense? Or do you see him being moved for pitching help, like you said, whether that's the Detroit Tigers for Tarek Skubal, whether it's to Milwaukee for a Freddie Peralta, and like I said, maybe you could create a package to where you get a Peralta and a Trevor McGill, and you're trading Brett Beatty and maybe like a Brandon Sproat and some other younger prospects in that. I'm not sure where the Mets go after now. Obviously, they're going to need pitching help. They're going to need outfield help, like we stated yesterday. But it's one of those signings where, similarly to like what happened with Jorge Polanco and what happened with Luke Weaver, these signings came out of nowhere. And it's very David Stearns-like, and it also fits the mold that it's a short-term, 3-year deal with opt-outs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. What you brought up to start that entire point is, I thought for sure as well that, if Bo Bichette was to sign any sort of deal with the Met, I mean, obviously it had to be short term to come here, but, I really thought there was no way he was going to take that kind of contract where it's short term, high AAV. But here we are. I mean, I guess the silver lining about it is, this contract, if he stays throughout the full 3 years, it only takes him to age 30. And we're seeing guys at 29, 30 years old getting these big time contracts. So, it's not like it's going to ruin any sort of payday for him in the future to where he could maybe get that 5-year deal similar to a Pete Alonso kind of contract in a couple of years down the line. Obviously, depending on what comes out of the lockout with this entire debacle. But nonetheless, it's just absolutely stunning to me still that this is the case. Again, like, I really don't even know how to feel, because we could talk about, the bat, but the thing I'm just so hung up on still is just like, again, what I talked about at the start is we heard about run prevention, and, he's going to play third base, and he doesn't have the best arm, and you're putting him over at third base. It's just like, I feel so confused about this, because initially when this was sent in the group chat, my thought was, okay, he's going to be the DH, and you keep Polanco at first base and keep Beatty at third base, and then I kind of like that. But at the same time, if he was the DH, you're probably not giving him that much, and it's like, you probably would have made an extra effort to get Schwarber if you viewed Bo Bichette as the DH, because let's not fool ourselves. I think all of us would rather have Kyle Schwarber than Bo Bichette if he was the DH. I don't know. Like, does Marcus Semien get reps at third base if this doesn't work, and then Bichette plays second base? I don't know. Like, again, I like the fit offensively because you need someone that could give you these extra base hits. He'll give you probably 20 home runs, maybe north of that slightly, or you at least hope, again, depending on the injuries like you were talking about, Matt. But I just don't know. Like, I hate to be this way. And because all offseason, I've been patient and been trying to say, I want to see the vision, and, I'll back what they view as right. I can't sit here, though, and lie and say I feel over the moon about it. Like, again, I think Bichette's a good player. It's just the fit wise. Like, I don't know how to feel. I mean, I guess the only silver lining I could point to this compared to Gino, because I just brought up Gino before, is Bichette's a more consistent hitter than Gino. Like, that's the one question I had if they did go that route is, do you want to go the route of a guy where Suarez, I mean, his entire career, every time it just peaks and valleys with that guy, where Bo Bichette gives you that consistency offensively throughout the full 162. So you have that going for you. Again, it's not even the offensive side of things. It's really more just the defense, where I don't know. And again, the offseason's not done. At the end of the day, we got to see what they do. Like you said, maybe Brett Beatty's moved to go get your Brenton Doyle or go get some sort of center fielder. Maybe he's moved to get a pitcher. Maybe you move him to get pitching help, and then you go out and you sign Cody Bellinger to a deal we're not expecting because we're hearing the 6 or 7 year deal for what or whatever for Bellinger. Maybe that comes down to earth, and the Mets get him on a short term high AAV deal. And then all of a sudden, that helps your defense, helps your lineup on top of that. And your lineup looks good. You moved Brett Beatty to get some pitching help. And all of a sudden, maybe you're cooking here. But for right now, for the moment, I just, again, I'm not mad, but I'm not to the moon like a lot, like some are. And again, I don't want to sit here and say you're wrong for being happy about it if you are. You're wrong for being mad about it if you are. I just question it in terms of the fact where it's like, we heard all about run prevention going into the offseason, and you signed 2 guys, 2 middle infielders who are going to play out of position now.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because I mean, listen, because right now I'm just looking through Baseball Savant. I'm looking through Fangraphs. I'm looking through all like the hitting metrics. Bo Bichette has a very good. He's a very good hitter, and I mean, I'm gonna read off some stats to you right now, but he has basically been what this Mets offense has been lacking. Because I mean, we always talk about like this team has the 2 things: they've lacked the ability to hit fastballs over the years, and they've lacked the ability to hit against left-handed pitchers. Now, I think the one thing I do like about Bo Bichette, and the one thing we've kind of complained about with the Mets lineup, is they've been more left-handed and they haven't had enough right-handed power bats. I know they had Pete Alonso last year, but Bo Bichette is a righty, so that does balance out the lineup a little bit more. I know if the Mets would have gotten Kyle Tucker, he would have been a lefty, but he does hit lefties fairly well, so that wouldn't have been too much. That wouldn't have been too much of a concern for me. But I mean, just his numbers against fastballs, right? 307 batting average, 447 slugging, expected batting average of 297, expected slugging of 452, and he does hit the breaking stuff well. He does hit the off-speed stuff as well. 315 batting average, 319 batting average, 493 slug, and a 609 slug. And then, I mean, just looking at the Fangraphs numbers, against lefties last year, let's see, he hit 308, 345 OBP, 546 slugging, 891 OPS, WRC plus of 143. And then against righties, because he hits fairly well against both sides of the plate, 312 batting average, 360 on base, 465 slug, 825 OPS, and a 131 on WRC plus. So you are getting a very good bat, like I said, and you're getting a very balanced bat as well, which is something that this Mets lineup has severely lacked over the past couple years. It's just like the fact that you said, I'm not too comfortable with him playing third base. Now look, maybe David Stearns and maybe like Kai Correa and people in the coaching staff, because obviously they revamped the coaching staff to maybe, bring in more coaches that preach better defense and they know how to coach better defense out of guys. Maybe they look at Bo Bichette and they see, okay, not a great shortstop, but maybe we see him moving to third base as more of a better option for him, because you don't have to have as much range as you do at shortstop compared to third base. So maybe do they view him as, okay, you get him healthy, you get him in spring training, you can work on reps, and maybe they view him as, okay, if we work with him enough, we could get him to be a better third baseman. Because like I said, if he was DHing, I would have been like, 100%, I'm down with this deal. And like I said, I love the bat. I think this bat's gonna work really well in this lineup. However, I'm just a little bit concerned about the defense at third base.
Yeah, it's again, like it's really just a mixed bag in that regard because again, like I could sit here and tell you everything I love about Bo Bichette offensively. It's just, the defense. And that was, my biggest concern of if they even pursued him in the first place is, and that's why I never, envisioned Bo Bichette even coming here. And that's why it caught me so off guard because like I keep saying, we heard about run prevention and Bo Bichette never fit that mold. So I never anticipated this happening because of that. But, we'll see. At the end of the day, though, the things that I love as well, just to talk about the bat, is the fact that like you said, it adds a tool, it adds an element that they really don't have. His runners and scoring position numbers, by the way, really good this past year, which is also encouraging to see. And just in terms of some of the other things, I lost the number that was just they just had up before that I was trying to pull up. But I mean, either way, I wonder, what they're envisioning now for this lineup in terms of the construction, though, because like, do you put Bo Bichette in the leadoff spot and move Lindor back out of the leadoff spot? Do you leave Lindor there? Because I don't know, Bo Bichette could profile well as a leadoff hitter more than Lindor. I get the stolen bases might be in question there because everyone likes that Lindor could at least steal you some bags from the leadoff spot. I don't know. I mean, the thing that I like. Sorry, were you about to say something?
Well, no, I was gonna say. I mean, you could play Bo Bichette at first base. I just wonder again, like, do the Mets view leadoff spot as that more traditional spot where you want your speedy contact guy at first at leading off? Because I know Lindor is no like speed demon by himself, but I mean just looking at the numbers on Baseball Savant, I mean Lindor ranked 48th percentile in sprint speed compared to 21st percentile for Bo Bichette. And again, I know his leg was hurt last year because I know when you look at 2024, he was at the 49th percentile. So if he does get healthy, he definitely could lead off, and obviously his bat does work well as a leadoff spot guy because that's a guy that does hit for contact, and that's a guy who does hit for power. Because listen, can Bo Bichette hit for power? Yes, he hit 18 home runs last year. Ideally, I wouldn't want him hitting third. I mean, probably the way I would envision the lineup now, I would envision Soto getting bumped down to 3, and then you either put. And then it's either what you feel more comfortable. You either put Lindor lead off, Bichette second, or Bichette lead off and Lindor second.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that would be the best route probably is you put Soto 3, have Bichette hit second, because then you give, the threat of Juan Soto behind Bo Bichette, especially for a guy that, Bichette doesn't really walk a lot, but he doesn't strike out a lot either. So like that's the good thing about it. Maybe you could get more walks out of Bichette if you put Juan Soto behind him because, again, you have the threat there. Or, just a general gives him more pitches, I should say, for him to hit because Juan Soto's behind him and, you're not going to want to face him. Maybe that gives the opportunity for Bichette to see more pitches in the strike zone. That's the way I would construct the lineup. Again, like bat-wise, completely makes sense in terms of the fit, but it's really just strange, this entire thing. Like, I'm sorry that I can't even make my thoughts clear right now because I'm all over the place. It's just, again, I didn't expect this. Like, to me, the pivot was always the trade market or Gino. That was my thoughts, but I want to get to the comments just to see what you guys are saying. Blast saying an odd move, 100% agree there. Charles saying that's cool. One question, why? I like him as a player. It's not a bad signing, but why? It seems like the bat profile is something they like, which again, it's hard to argue for the fit of what this offense needs. He does fit the mold of that, but it's also, bizarre. Like, I get why you're questioning it because it's bizarre based on everything we heard. But yeah, I think all of us are with you, Blast, that a trade has to be coming.
Yeah, because I'm just seeing now, this was 15 minutes ago, but John Heyman said that Mets see Brett Beatty playing multiple options, including third base. And Michael Marino ended up quote tweeting that, and he said, "This sounds a lot like David Stern's final words regarding Jeff McNeil." Because if you remember, before McNeil got traded, Stearns was basically saying that they see McNeil as a versatile player. He could play anywhere on the diamond. So, I mean, it's looking like I would at least expect that Brett Beatty to get traded because again, I would rather. Could he play first base? Sure. But like I said, I would at least rather get a guy. Listen, maybe they do still target a guy like Suarez Eugenio Suarez to play first base. I'm not exactly sure what his contract is going to be like, and in terms of, and obviously, because Suarez is around 34 years old, so he's not going to be looking for long term. I just wonder what the AAV wise we'll be looking at for him. But like I said, if you pair him at first base with Jorge Polanco, and then those guys could DH. Obviously, listen, the defense is not exactly the greatest, but you are getting two very good bats at first base. And then, like I said, you have Bo Bichette at thirds because remember, the Mets still kind of need a DH too, because right now Mark Vientos is their DH. So I don't know. I am very intrigued on how, when we get to opening day, or even not even opening day, but when we get to spring training, what this lineup is going to look like, because it's looking like the Mets are constructing a lineup to where it's a lot of power, it's a lot of contact, but they're making a very versatile lineup to where it's like, okay, it's not the greatest defenders at each position, but these are guys that could play multiple positions on top of that. Because we know that Semien can play second, but if you have to move around the diamond, he can. Jorge Polanco, while he's going to play a little bit first base, he can move around the diamond. Bo Bichette can move around the diamond, even though, again, I would rather him play second base apart from shortstop. But if you had to play him at shortstop, he could do it like for a game or two. So it's very weird how Stearns and the Mets are constructing this lineup.
That's the one thing I will say, though, is, we did also hear Stearns say ad nauseum, run prevention could come in a variety of ways. And, it could come by having guys that are simply versatile. And he wanted more defensive versatility to make guys like Mendoza have an easier job. Maybe that's really what it is, because, this is the only other good thing also about this is I like that, Lindor, you're not obligated now to play him every day at shortstop. You could give him some more DH reps and put Bichette at shortstop if you need to, or you could put even Semien maybe could play a bit of shortstop. So I do like it in that regard. Just again, these guys aren't the best defensively. Is there something that happened, or?
Well, this was from Bob Nightingale, so take it with a grain of salt if you want to. But he said the Phillies had agreed to Bo Bichette's request for a 7-year, $200 million deal last night and believed they would sign him until the Mets swooped in with their 3-year, $126 million offer.
Honestly, that's the one time I'll believe Bob Nightingale, because he's good at reporting news after it happens. He's just garbage at breaking news. So, yeah, I mean, they swooped in and stole him from Philly, which, I guess that's a victory in all this as well. I don't know. Just back to the point, though, you were making about Gino. I don't know. Like, I'd love him to be the DH. Do not get me wrong. I just don't know if they go that route, because you're kind of making it then at that point a little right-handed heavy, the lineup, unless maybe they get Gino and trade for like Jarren Duran. Like, if that's your lineup next year, you add somehow Gino. Again, I think it depends on the price at that point, because it's hard to envision them going completely bonkers with the payroll. But, if we're going to sit here and play Halloween on January 16th, maybe they get Gino and they add Duran. And if that's the lineup, that's better than last year's lineup to me. Easily. Do I have questions about the defense? Definitely. But you can't argue they're a way better offensive team. Plus, maybe you add Framber. Maybe you add Freddie Peralta. I don't know. I mean, I'm still leaning that they're going to get Peralta more than Framber. But that's why at the end of the day, I mean, we've preached patience this entire offseason. We'll continue to. Like, as much as I question the move today, I can't sit here and, rip on it or celebrate it until I see what else happens. Because, it was the same thing when Nimmo got traded. I questioned it at the time, but I need to see the full body of work with this offseason before I could sit here and come to final conclusions. Letting Cheeto Bear go, you want to see the full body of work of the offseason before you make the full judgment.
Yeah, I think in terms of now, like, just speaking more about the pitching, I think a Peralta deal is more likely now, because listen, I know, like, if we landed Kyle Tucker, obviously the immediate move would have been to go to Milwaukee and request to trade for a guy like Freddie Peralta, right? But I could have understood the argument from Mets fans that said, I mean, listen, You just lost out on Kyle Tucker. We're not exactly sure what the next pivot move was going to be because, like I said, and like we both said, we did not expect Bo Bichette to sign with the Mets. I mean, this news just came out of nowhere, and this signing came out of nowhere. So, and listen, I could have understood the argument of saying, okay, let's maybe not trade a bunch of prospects for Freddie Peralta, considering we're not exactly sure how this lineup and this roster is going to shake out. Plus, he's also going to be a free agent next year, so you could just sign him next year and not have to give up, prospects as well. But I mean, now with this Bichette signing, it's fairly signaling that okay, they're going to fill out this lineup a lot deeper than what we probably first initially anticipated. Because if they signed a guy like Kyle Tucker, and again, like they would have offered him a $50 million AAV, you probably would have gotten a less deeper lineup in terms of the bottom of the lineup. And I know Bo Bichette's still making $42 million a year, but it's more short term. I mean, not really because it's only 3 years to 4 years, but there might be more of a sense to spend more on other positions of the diamond. Like I said, getting a guy to pair with Polanco at first base / DH, trading for another outfielder. But like I said, now with Peralta, I feel that the Mets will be more willing to go and meet whatever the Brewers' request will be to trade him. Obviously, I still think there will be a certain length they will be willing to go to just because the Brewers, the Brewers might want a guy like Jonah Tong. I don't see David Stearns willing to trade a guy like Jonah Tong for Freddie Peralta unless, and this is the big if, because we heard from John Heyman last night, and I even talked about this briefly on the stream that we did last night, that Peralta, he went to the Brewers earlier and he said that he's willing to extend, and the Brewers they don't want to extend them because they don't keep their star players, whether it's position wise or pitching wise. So if the Mets are able to get a deal done for Freddie Peralta along with an extension, I could maybe see a guy like Tong being thrown in there. Obviously, like I said, would I love Tong being thrown in the deal? No, I would rather trade a guy like Sproat. But if there is an extension in place, I would at least feel a little bit more better about that deal.
Yeah, 100% agree there. Like, if they could get Peralta to do a sign and trade, Jonah Tong, I'm not even thinking twice about putting him in the deal. And again, it's not a slight at Jonah Tong. I like Jonah Tong, and I think obviously there is, high rotation upside with him. But you're talking about a proven ace versus what Jonah Tong could be. And Freddie Peralta, correct me if I'm wrong, he's still, 27 years old, right?
He's 29.
Like, 29. All right, I thought he was younger than that. I mean, still, you're going to get a lot of quality years out of Freddie Peralta, and I get the argument, it's hard to move controllable pitching for for a guy like Freddie Peralta. But again, if there's that control that gets added to him, that changes the conversation for me entirely as well. But we'll see. Again, like, this opens up a lot more options on the trade market because now Brett Baty is a piece that you could move. Like, that's really the biggest thing about all of this is Brett Baty just became expendable. And as much as I've never been high on Brett Baty, as much as most of us are, not high on Brett Baty, some fans are. But again, I like the idea of capitalizing on what Brett Baty did last year and selling on that instead of, if his value diminishes again, like we saw with Vientos this past year. I'd rather move Brett Baty now than wait and see what happens. But I want to get some more comments just because there's a lot I didn't get to here. Just got the noti on MLB, was not expecting it to be that quick after last night and knew you guys would be live quick. Wow, talk about a fast pivot. Definitely a fast pivot, and definitely, again, stunning that it was this quick. Yeah, I guess that the Mets kind of LA Dodgered the Phillies, so fuck you, Phillies. Eat shit. Yeah. Say goodbye to Baty and or Vientos. Yeah, I still think that both of them are gone. To me now, though, I think Brett Baty's definitely more likely to be gone than Vientos because as much as I don't like Vientos DHing, at least he could do that, where Brett Baty is just kind of without a position right now entirely.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, like, comparing, because if Bichette was playing DH, and obviously he still could because, you could move around pieces, in terms of an everyday lineup, but if Bichette was DHing, obviously you would be more willing to keep Brett Beatty because at least Beatty, while he does have inconsistencies with the offense in his bat, at least he still provides reliable defense. He's not a Gold Glove defender, but from what he came up with in terms of his glove, because when he first came up, his glove was horrible. But I'll give him credit; he did work on his glove at third base, and he has become a much more reliable defender at third base. But with the news now that Bichette's playing third base, obviously, if we're comparing DHs, while maybe Beatty has more of a reliable bat than Vientos, I think Vientos has the higher upside and the better fit as a DH bat because Vientos is a guy that has great bat speed. He pulls the ball in the air, and he can hit for power. Now, listen, if Vientos does stay, obviously it's not a guarantee. We'll see what happens. Maybe he does get traded, but I am intrigued to see what Troy Snicker and Jeff Albert could get out of Mark Vientos. Listen, I'm not saying that you could get 2024 Vientos back. Obviously, if they can do that, that's fantastic because now you're adding another big stick to your lineup. But if you could get any sort of resemblance to 2024 Vientos, then, I mean, again, you're still getting a decent bat for the bottom part of this lineup. And another thing that this Mets lineup has lacked severely for the last couple of years is they've lacked decent power bats in the bottom part of their lineups. Because how many times have we seen them, rotate guys like Daniel Vogelback, Winker, Jared Young? Like these are not good, down the lineup options. Like obviously, like I said, with Vientos, we'll see what kind of season he does have if he stays there. But like I said, he does fit the role. He does fit the role better of a quote unquote DH type compared to Brett Beatty.
That's the thing. Like, I don't know. I'm so split on the Mark Vientos thing on if I would want to dump him or not because, I could see with this new coaching staff them being able to maximize Vientos. And, I still just help but wonder, like he hit 17 home runs still in a down year. And you got to wonder if they could, like you said, even get some semblance of 2024 Mark Vientos, if that's good enough then to be your DH. And again, with this coaching staff, could you unlock it? I don't know. To me, it goes either way in that regard. But the good news is you're not really tied to him. If it really becomes that bad, it would suck to lose him for nothing. But, if it comes down to it, you could just DFA him during the season. But I don't know. I guess it really depends how other teams value him because if there's no trade partner, you might as well, there's a lot of lightning. Enjoy the ride and see if you could catch lightning in a bottle here with him one more time. But we'll see what ends up happening on that. It's a better pivot than Bellinger. I agree, just given the term of how much Bellinger wants. I think the Mets are still going to be active on the Bellinger market, but it's only going to be to their terms. I don't think, this whole narrative that was going around that they're going to get a bidding war with the Yankees. I just don't see that coming to fruition. I just think if it's a short-term high AAV deal like we've seen the Mets going after, I think then maybe Bellinger will end up being a Met. But again, it's got to be at their terms. It's not going to be, that long-term deal. I'm trying to avoid saying the years, but it's not going to be that long-term deal that we're hearing that the Yankees are potentially going to offer. It's going to be similar to the Tucker thing where the Mets offer short-term high AAV where, the Yankees are the Blue Jays in this scenario offering the long-term deal. And then this time the Dodgers aren't going to come in to, grab Cody Bellinger.
At least you hope, but you can never count those fuckers out of anything.
But unfortunately, that's true.
But I mean, yeah, listen, with the Bellinger thing, do I think they'll try to get him and do I think they'll try to negotiate? Yes, but again, I don't see him coming here just basically because we know how Scott Boras operates. And Bellinger has taken multiple short-term deals in the past before. Obviously, when he had his, very bad, what was it, the 2022 year or was it the 2023 season in LA where, the Dodgers non-tendered him. He signed that 1-year deal with the Cubs, had a decent year, signed that 3-year deal with the Cubs. And again, in that same offseason, he was looking for a long-term deal, but he had to settle for the short-term deal. With him and Scott, listen, if his agent was any other agent, I would at least feel maybe more comfortable that the Mets could land Bellinger on a short-term deal. But with Scott Boras and the fact that the guy's on crack, I don't see it because already we know that the Yankees offered him a 5-year deal at 150. So you're already competing with a 5-year deal for 30 million AAV. And for the Mets to beat that, they would probably have to offer a 6-year deal. I'm not going to say the second number, but they would have to offer a 6-year deal with maybe more of a higher AV because probably at least I think we at least know that Bellinger probably does have a preference to go back to the Yankees. He's just looking for the exact number that him and Boris want. So yeah, I just listen. I mean, if you could get Cody Bellinger on a 2-3 year deal with opt outs high AV, go ahead, go do it because again, that's another good bat. And you're providing more versatility, and you're getting a Gold Glove caliber, type glove out in either left field or a guy that can play first base. And also, he does help with the fact that because like I brought up before, if the Mets brought Kyle Tucker, you wouldn't have to rush Carson Bench up here to the major leagues. You could allow him to over marinate down in AAA with Syracuse, let him get more ABs, and then when he's ready, you could come up and put him into this lineup. So whether they do it, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I just personally don't see it because, again, we know how Scott Boras and Cody, or at least we know how Scott Boras operates.
Yeah, and it's just I really wonder, if they value Cody Bellinger in that light to where do they even want to go the short-term high AAV route? Like, is it worth giving him 45 million? Because I feel like that's what it would take to get him on that short-term high AAV deal. Do they value him enough to get him at 45 million per year? I mean, maybe since it would be a short-term deal and they're not tied into him long-term, because we've heard the reports that the Mets are willing to, go crazy on the payroll this year. If it is, at their terms, those short-term deals. So maybe, but at the same time, do you really want to be tied into a lot of these guys then for 2 to 3 years? I don't know. I mean, you do have money coming off the books next year. Like, you have an entire starting rotation pretty much off the books after this upcoming year, but then you're going to have to replace those guys. You do have, I feel like I'm forgetting someone in terms of the offense that comes off the books. Maybe I'm not.
Well,
But
in 3 years, Semien comes off the books. His $26 million.
I meant for next year. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
for
next
next.
year, there's really not. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could commit to this offense then for the next few years if you get Bellinger on a 2 or 3 year deal. But again, do you want to tie yourself down to that when you're going to have to revamp the entire rotation pretty much next year? I don't know, but I guess we'll see what ends up happening. Again, I can't sit here and make judgment until I see the full picture going into spring training. I just can't do that.
Yeah, and no deferred money in the deal too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't expect any deferrals, especially after they weren't going to defer money with Tucker. It makes sense, and that's probably what got this to beat the Phillies offer is the upfront money. Two Cats, though, saying totally caught off guard. Definitely same. Carol saying that he's a gamer. Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. Again, he's very consistent, which I like about adding Bo Bichette to this lineup in comparison to Gino. It just, again, I like Gino in terms of the fact that he'll give you 40 nukes, but we'll see. Maybe this coaching staff gets the most out of Bo Bichette as well. Daniel saying great hitter. Bye Beatty. Yeah, it probably looks like Beatty's out the door. Bichette would have been a Met killer if he went to a team like the Phillies. Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. And he would have fit that lineup and that ballpark perfectly as well. That's the thing is he really would have fit playing in Citizens Bank Park. See what I mean? The players you don't hear the Mets linked to have a better chance of wearing a Mets uniform. Yeah, and Matt brought that up at the top of the show as well, that we didn't hear anything about Luke Weaver outside of, the memes of former starter and he's a Yankee, but we didn't hear anything about him. We didn't hear anything about Polo at all. Well, briefly, I think it was I don't remember who it was on SNY that brought
It was
up
Will.
Polo.
It was Will Salmon
Will
the night before, but before that, there was no talks that Polanco or that the Mets were interested in Polanco.
Yeah, and then obviously, we didn't hear anything about the Nimmo trade until it happened. So working in silence, and it's for the better. It's definitely for the better. Um, Ray saying I'm not over the moon. Bichette has question marks with the glove. Same concerns for why we let Pete go. I mean, yeah, that's fair. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm overly excited about it. I'm happy in terms of the offensive profile. Do I hope for a little more power from the bat? I really do. But again, we'll see if they could get a little bit more from more power from the bat. It's really just again the defense where I have the questions. They need to trade that glut of infielders 100%. And that also, Acuna is another name too that we haven't talked about. I don't think he has
Yeah.
any value on the trade market because no one wants, a glorified what's the word I want to use? I don't even know, but he came from the same dick as his brother Ronald. So, that means he's got the name value. No one wants a glorified Terrence Gore, but maybe there's a world where you could get some minor league pitching, maybe get, a low end reliever for Acuna. I don't know. Maybe. Will White saying a few more big moves coming. Yeah, I mean, there has to be because they still only have two outfielders at the end of the day. So, yeah, there has to be big moves coming, and they still haven't addressed the rotation. So, you're 100% right about that one, Will. Let's see. Actually, I scrolled down. I like this better than Tucker. Will was also saying before, and that's fair. I personally would have preferred Tucker just because I think he's a better defensive player, and this team has such a need for outfielders. But hey, that's your opinion. I'm not gonna shit on your opinion. Still need pitching is right. Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's still time for that. Opening day is not tomorrow, so we'll see. Rest in peace, Brett Beatty. There's no way they keep him, right? Most likely not. Like Matt brought up before and Michael Marino said on Twitter, we're hearing a lot of the same things we heard about Jeff McNeil before he got dealt now with Brett Beatty. So
Yeah, and this is the other thing I want to bring up too, because I just remembered and I just confirmed it to look at on Spotrac. But yeah, the Bo Bichette had a qualifying offer, so the Mets are giving up draft picks to sign him. So now with them giving up draft picks to sign Bo Bichette, I don't see it likely that they're going to go sign a guy like Framber Valdez. And I thought that was also not realistic at all, just because we just saw the deal that Ranger Suarez got for 5 years, 135, and I know he's 2 years younger than Framber Valdez, but I'm sure Framber Valdez was looking at the deal. I'm like, okay, if Ranger Suarez can get 5 years, then I could definitely get something in like that 4-5 year range. So I definitely do think if they're going to get starting pitching help, which they will and they should, and if not, then we'll have major problems and concerns with that. But if they do get pitching, it's going to come through the trade market. And we also did see John Heyman said it earlier in the morning that they're interested in bringing back Griffin Canning, which I do like as maybe
yes.
a bullpen option, as a long man option. So if they could get that done, and then, like I said, trade for Peralta, maybe somehow Skubal becomes available because the Tigers alienated him because they offered him $19 million in arbitration. Meanwhile, he wants $32 million. So I still don't think Skubal's going to get moved just because the Tigers are still competing for World Series next year. But like I said, if the Mets do make a move for starting pitching, it's going to come through the trade market.
Yeah, I mean, I also texted in our group chat. Like, I just want to get Freddie and extend him because I don't even want to fuck it. Like, next year, obviously, make an offer for Skubal, but I want the safety net here and ready to go in case because I just can't do another offseason of this with the fucking Dodgers. I just cannot do it, man. But yeah, like you said, they have to address the pitching staff. If not, we'll have major questions. I do like to hear the Griffin Canning thing, though. That makes me excited because I was hoping that he would come back on like a 1 year prove it deal type thing just to have another pitching option. And, we talked about it nonstop last year. He would be really good in that long man role, that Trevor Williams type role. Instead of having to rely on like Brazabon to do it like they did at points, or, if you need an opener, Griffin Canning could do that at least. So, because we know Kodai Senga, you can't pencil him in for 30 starts. I mean, David Stern said it himself. You'd be foolish to. So I do like the idea of bringing Canning back and seeing if you could get some of the same magic you got from him last year. If the pitchers strike out all 27 batters in the game, then we should be good with his defensive play. I'm not sure who you're referring to on that one.
I think he's talking about Bichette.
Bichette, yeah. Imagine a Mets trade later. Talk about a fast pivot. We did lose the core for in a span of 2 weeks, and that felt pretty fast. This has to be the most moves in a Mets offseason I could remember. I mean, yeah, things are also just going to ramp up naturally because we're less than a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting at this point. So, guys want to get their contracts and be in the building when the time comes. And Tucker, that domino needed to fall for now Bichette to sign in, and Bellinger's going to follow. And you're going to see these names start to fall off the board. Eugenio Suarez, which, we'll see what happens there. Because now I do wonder if that's what the Phillies pivot might be, is to go get a guy like Eugenio Suarez, since, they're not happy with Alec Boehm at all. They are not happy with him. So maybe that's their pivot, which we'll end up seeing if that ends up being the case. But I do wonder, what happens there. But now the dominoes are going to fall, is my entire point. It really just needed to be Tucker first to see what monster deal he gets. And now that it happened, I think, these next 2 weeks are going to be very chaotic, which is good for us content creators, at least.
Yeah. Suarez to the Phillies would be a weird deal just because, listen, his bat would fit great in Citizens Bank Park. It's just, again, you're going to play him at third base when he already has a shitty glove because you have Harper at first base. You're not moving Harper off of there. Unless, because, I mean, and also Schwarber's playing DH, and he's going to be the full-time DH, so there's not much more to discuss about there. But unless, because there have been rumors that, and I know this has been going on for a while now, that they've been wanting to trade Nick Castellanos, but no one's wanted Nick Castellanos because why the hell would you want to take on his freaking contract of $20 million, even if it is for 1 year? Because if they were to move Castellanos, I could at least see a world where you can move Bryce Harper back to the outfield and then play Suarez at first base. But I mean, if you're playing Suarez at third base, and I know Bohm's not a great defensive player either, but I guess they view the upside of Suarez's bat over Bohm to where they just don't worry about the defense at third base. I don't know how they're exactly going to view that with the Phillies and Dave Dombrowski.
Yeah, and that would add a lot of redundancy though in that lineup, adding a guy like Suarez too, which that's the other reason why Bichette was just like the perfect fit for what they needed in that lineup, and suck. Every time I think of Beatty is in 2023 when he missed that infield pop-up and it bounced right in his face, insult to injury. And we might not have to worry about that anymore because he's probably getting moved. Thanks for the coverage, guys. What's the next play? Maybe pitching. I'll start this one off because I really don't know what the next play is. As we've seen, this has been such an unpredictable offseason. Based on rumors, I mean, I would sit here and tell you that a Freddie Peralta trade's the next most likely, but we've also seen the Mets have stuff where it's not in the rumors and then it just happens. So, maybe it's a low end reliever. Your guess is as good as mine, but I think that a starting pitcher or some sort of outfielder needs to be the next domino to fall here.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the next move is going to be, just because still the Mets do need multiple help in multiple areas. Like I said, outfield and pitching wise, they could even still add another arm. They could still add another arm to the bullpen because, like I said, there is the whole rumor that they're interested in bringing back Griffin Canning. So the only thing I'll say though is, if I'll say something's more likely, I'll say a trade for either a pitcher or an outfielder is more likely than a signing.
Yeah, I agree there entirely. Last year in particular, 5-9 was a train wreck. Yeah, and like we've said the entire offseason, they are looking to build a lineup. This isn't going to be a top-heavy lineup with Cheeto Bear, Soto and Lindor, and then you have nothing outside of that. It's about building the depth for the lineup. And again, they still have to add an outfielder. Who it will be, I don't know. But I'd imagine they're going to try to get a left-handed outfielder, left-handed hitting outfielder, I should say, at this point. And then again, maybe they do add a DH. Maybe they do. And if not, then you got to hope Mark Vientos could give you some semblance of that 2024 season. And again, like, I get that it's hard to argue, but if they add Cody Bellinger, I would argue this lineup's better than last year's. I really would.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You could argue at the top of the lineup, it's worse because Cheeto Bear's not there, but I would argue depth-wise, 1 through 9, it's a way better lineup. Plus, you still then have Carson Bench waiting in the wings to potentially come up and help offensively. If we get Belly and Valdez and potentially trade for Peralta, we'd be right back in the mix of top teams in the NL. Yeah, I agree there. Completely agree, especially if they get... I don't expect them to land both Valdez and Peralta. It would be a pleasant surprise if they did, and I would not complain if they did. But I don't expect it because I still think the Mets are going to want some sort of financial flexibility to go after Skubal next offseason. Even if they don't get him, they're going to want the flexibility to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Saw a bunch of clients saying Tucker was mid. Yeah, so you'd rather roll out 160 Michael Conforto out there and Tanner Scott over Diaz, who blew 15 games. Yeah, Kyle Tucker is mid because he didn't sign with the Mets. That's my opinion. So...
And he's not built. And he's not built for the grind.
Yeah, he's not built for the grind. He doesn't want to go through the grind like a real man. Trey Beatty for Robert or Duran. Again, you'll never sell me on the Robert thing. There's just no world where you will. I'd rather get Jarren Duran. Again, I think now a left-handed stick is more important than it's ever been. I think you have to add a lefty to this lineup. One way or another.
Yeah, definitely.
Look at Evan Man Classic 24/7, 365 Halloween celebrator. Sad man. I apologize, Nick. I learned from you. What could I say? I learned from you about playing Halloween. Still believe Belly signs with the Mets. Cohen's pissed that he didn't get Tucker. Maybe that's the case. But I think I agree with what Carson said on Twitter that if they're going to go after Bellinger and give him some lucrative deal just because Cohen's pissed off about the Tucker thing, we've lost the plot. Yeah. We've lost the plot at that point. You don't go out there and give irresponsible deals just because you're mad that a different free agent did sign with your team.
Yeah, listen, I mean, like, and this was going back to the 2022 offseason, right? Like, listen, I'm not going to sit here and lie, right? After Steven Matz spurned the Mets, I loved it when Steve Cohen said, fuck it, I'm going to give Max Scherzer a big-time deal. I'm going to sign Marte to a 4-year deal. I'm going to sign Escobar. I'm going to sign Cano. Listen, from a fan perspective and for the fact that we had not seen big-time spending like that for the Mets, like, never, I loved it. But, like, let's be honest, in retrospective and looking at it now, how those contracts, none of them worked out because Max Scherzer, while he had a decent 2022 year, shit the bed in his final start against Atlanta and shit the bed in the first wild card game against the Padres, and both of us were there, and we know exactly how we fucking felt. And then midway through that 2023 season, that contract got traded, and the Mets had to eat a ton of money just to get Luis Acuna back. Eduardo Escobar, his deal didn't work out and still got traded midway to 2023. Mark Canha, same thing. His deal didn't work out, even though I think Cano provided solid offense for the Mets in a short time. Still, that move got worked out. And then Starling Marte, sure, he had the great first year, but we were all looking to move on from that deal after year one because he just didn't stay healthy at all through years 2, 3, and 4. So, listen, I get that Steve Cohen was maybe not happy that Kyle Tucker spurned them, but you have to be at least smart with how you allocate your money after the fact that, Tucker spurned the Mets because and I know at least now I'm more confident that the Mets are going to allocate their money more wiser because when you just compare who the guys at the helm were, when you had Billy Epler who didn't know what the fuck he was doing, compared to a guy like David Stearns who knows how to build a roster properly and who knows how to allocate money properly to the right players. So, like I said, I love the fact in 2022 when he went and rage spended, but we have to agree that in retrospective that wasn't the smartest idea, and it's never is the smartest idea because do the LA Dodgers ever rage spend? No, they don't. They identify their guys who they want to give their money to, and if they don't land those guys, which is not most of the time because every time the Dodgers want someone they do, but in a hypothetical sense, if the Dodgers do not land the guy that they want, they say, okay, we'll save our money, we'll invest in like shorter term deals, and then when the next superstar becomes available, we'll just give him the money and we'll sign him.
Yeah, I mean we've said that at nauseum too. They shop in the A tier player market only, and the only exceptions really are guys like Teoscar, but that's a guy that they gave a short term deal to. It's not like they tied him down to a 7-year deal, so completely different circumstances. You think they might confuse Luis Angel Acuna with Ronald. Hopefully, a good trade in return. Drury would fall for the trick. Unfortunately, there's no Chris Drury in the MLB that I could think of, at least off the top of my head. I mean, that's a different level of incompetence. There's a lot of incompetence in the MLB. Don't get it twisted, but I don't think there's anything to that magnitude, unfortunately. Let's say not even the lights are happy with Bohm. Yeah, exactly. Start should now trade Beatty, Sproat, and Wenninger for Peralta. I would take that deal in a heartbeat. Yeah. I don't know what the Brewers are looking for, but you have to imagine they want Beatty, and that's part of this signing. And again, there or at least some team that the Mets are in trade talks with, they want Beatty, and this helped make Beatty expendable. Bo was a rarity. He could hit for power and bat 300. I think the power is a little more diminished than it's been in previous years, unfortunately. But I also could see a world where the Mets could get it back again, especially with this new coaching staff that they have here. And that's at least the hope. I don't know if you're ever going to get 2021 Bo Bichette. I mean, if you do, then that would be freaking great. But we'll see what ends up happening in that regard. I don't see Bellinger signing with the Mets after this, but anything is possible. Again, it's going to have to be that short-term high AAV deal. It's going to have to be that. I'd sign either Bellinger or Suarez for more thump in the lineup. Agree, but again, I'm going to keep saying it, not on a long-term deal with Bellinger. I just think giving him that 7-year contract would be a huge mistake, and you just got rid of Brandon Nimmo. Why would you add essentially another version of Brandon Nimmo with the contract?
I think just one more thing, just to touch upon quickly upon the Brewers. I mean, just looking at their lineup right now, because their infield right now is currently looking like Vaughn at first base, Terang at second base, Joey Ortiz, who was a mess, offensively, and then they have Caleb Durbin at third base. So I know Caleb Durbin's a righty, Brett Beatty's a lefty. So maybe do they look to platoon them at third base? Because you also know that because I mean Durbin can play some shortstop as well, and then Beatty as well. Last year he did play some second base, so he could take some time away from Bryce Terang, if he needs a rest per se. So I definitely do see that the Brewers definitely could have an interest in Brett Beatty, just like I said, because he fits the mold of a versatile infielder, and maybe the Brewers feel like they could get more consistency at a Brett Beatty's bat, with their hitting coaches.
That, and the Brewers are still going to try to contend next year. They are going to want guys that are MLB ready, which is why I think you're going to have to move one of these major league starters, whether it's Peterson, which I think is less likely in terms of who they'd want. I think the most likely Sproat or Tong. And then you're going to have to move, a Brett Beatty to make this more enticing, to where they're getting 2 major league players for their best starter on their roster. So that's how you're going to have to entice them. I'd rather wait for Scooble than Peralta. Like I said before, you're playing a dangerous game though if you do that, because
Yeah.
as much as I 1000% agree, you also have to have the concern at the end of the day that the Dodgers are going to be in on Scooble. And if you could get Peralta and have it be a sign and trade, I'm sorry, I'd rather have the safety net in the building. And then why not still pursue Scooble next offseason? Why not try to have both? As crazy as it sounds, it could happen. But um yeah, again, it just you're playing too dangerous of a game if you wait for Scooble.
Also, I will say this too. Like, listen, I want Scooble. I've made that clear on this channel. But if we're gonna big brain this, because when you look at the Mets contract wise, a lot of their contracts come off the books in 2 to 3 years. And who will potentially be on the move in terms of trade talks in 2 to 3 years? Paul Skeets. Because he's going to get, obviously he's going to get his contract this year, then 27 ARB1, 28, ARB2, 29, ARB3, and then he hits free agency at age 28 in 2030. So potentially the Mets are looking at this like, okay, we're gonna play this, a short term game now. We're still gonna look to compete, but when a lot of our big money contracts are coming off the books, we can trade for a guy like Paul Skeens, and maybe unless I'm not sure if he's a Boris client, he probably is, but if he's not, you could trade for him and sign to an extension, or you could have him for the 1 year, let him come here, see how it works, and then offer him that big time contract when he's 28 years old and entering free agency. So there is multiple ways and there's multiple aspects you can look at this in terms of how the Mets are setting up their roster for the long term view.
Yeah, exactly. And, like I even said before, they still could pursue Scooble because you do have Mania coming off the books. Hopefully, Senga's a little more movable because I think it's 1 year left on the contract after this year. So that should at least open up an avenue to move him a little bit more. You could just pay down the contract a little bit. Clay Holmes, if he has another solid year as a starter, he's going to opt out. David Peterson, you lose control over him soon. So there's a lot of flexibility for the long term, but this is why the Mets are giving these 2 or 3 year deals, because they want this flexibility long term to where when a Paul Skeens becomes available, like you mentioned, Matt, they could go and get him. When these other star players that, we're not even talking about, and, the controls over with their teams, we don't know what baseball is going to be like after the lockout, but assuming it's similar to what it is now, the Mets will be in a position to where they could go and get these guys.
Yeah, 100%.
Last few comments here before we wrap things up. Have to beat the bottom feeder teams this year too. I'm sick of that. The only teams that should give us problem, Philly, LA, in my opinion, with the right moves is inexcusable. Praying for an insane Noel McLean year. The Dodgers players are going to realize they're printing fake money. Tucker's going to try to buy a meal at In-N-Out Burger after a game, and the cashier will realize it's a fake Benny. Yeah, hopefully they do get a big year from McLean, and hopefully in general, I mean, hopefully it's not just bottom feeders. Hopefully they could compete with, the top teams. It's not going to be easy, obviously, to compete with this Dodgers team, but at the end of the day, we'll see, what else the Mets have up their sleeves to be competitive next year. And at the end of the day, as long as they're attempting to be competitive, that's really what you could ask for. And like Carson said, the main thing, I just want to see this team freaking get back-to-back playoff appearances at this rate. I know it's sad to say, but they've rarely done it in the history of the franchise. So it would be nice if they could build their way to that at least. And yes, this is fair. You do got to worry about the Phillies.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about the Braves. Obviously they've been injury riddled the past 2 years, but yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that standpoint. They got to worry about the Phillies, of course, first. But I don't know if you have any final thoughts to wrap things up, but I think we covered about everything here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like the signing offensively. I have my questions defensively with Bichette playing third base, but I will say for the contract and for the bat type, I like it. We'll just see now what the next move is, whether it's trading for a starting pitcher, whether it's trading for outfield help. We will obviously see, but buckle up, folks, because with the fact that we're literally a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and there's still a lot of free agents on the board. Obviously, it's starting to dwindle down a little bit now, but there are still some bigger names, so we will start to see some more moves happening soon, and that means more live streams. So, which is always a good thing here on this channel.
Yeah. Like you said before, I have my questions with Bichette. I also like things about Bichette, but we will see as he was the next in a series of culture changing moves, and there's still plenty more to go around. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching this breaking news live stream. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live for more breaking news, bracking news. If you're Hector Gomez, whatever was that, or was that the Portes? I don't remember. Either way, breaking news, bracking news, whatever it is, playing pretend, whatever. But we will see you guys in the next one.